Hey guys, Madeline here. Today we are going to talk about if my husband and I have had a difficult time communicating. And this I actually had written when we were first dating. And since then we've had a couple months of marriage. So I'm going to give you a little bit of both perspectives, which I think could be really helpful. So in one word, yes. We have had a difficult time communicating. I don't know that I've ever heard of a couple that has not had to work on communication at some point, in some way, shape, or form. It's such an important part of a relationship, and honestly, probably almost the most important thing. And everyone does it just a little bit differently. There's always something to learn about it. Our biggest difference here is that Ben is a verbal processor, and I am an internal processor. What these mean is that a verbal processor needs to say things out loud and talk through them in order to understand and work through how they feel about something. An internal processor, on the other hand, is the exact opposite. They usually need time to work through it in their head, and trying to talk through it or voice it out loud will most likely be difficult and only confuse them. This is something we discovered early on in our relationship. Ben would literally be sitting there for like 5 minutes of me in silence, just not saying anything, and he'd be wondering if I was even on the same topic or had just forgotten about it or was upset at him or something. It was a struggle. After several times of this happening, we finally had a discussion where I was able to explain to him that my brain just does not process things as quickly as his does. And if I try to voice what I'm thinking out loud so he knows, I'm still there, and it ends up messing up my train of thought, or I say something I don't really mean or that isn't the whole truth. It can be difficult sometimes to not see the other person's way of communication as wrong, but please know that neither of these are wrong. But on my end, it requires effort to ask Ben what little things I can do to help improve his end, like even just saying, "Babe, I need time to think about this for a few minutes," or "We are okay, just give me a second." Those can mean the world to him because he at least knows I'm not mad and he has the assurance that I will think about it. Secondly, it can require a lot of patience on his part to bear with me while I think through it, and let me tell you, that boy has been so patient with me and I am so thankful for him. Since that time, and in the few months we've been married, I feel like I have taken massive steps. I have gone from him having to drag it out of me with all his strength to me now sometimes bringing things up that I'm having a hard time with. Our conversations move faster and are more frequent, and we are definitely still learning. In fact, in the last couple of weeks, we've had several communication conversations, but they have been so helpful and we understand each other better because of it. Communication is hard, and for some people, incredibly challenging. But here's something I'd like to share that I think is super important when it comes to this. I listened to a podcast recently by Focus on the Family, and if you haven't heard of them, you should definitely check them out. I highly recommend. Anyways, this podcast I listened to recently was titled Nurturing Your Spouse's Heart. In it, the pastor who was speaking for part of it was the son of a well-known and prominent author of many marriage and relationship books, biblically based. I don't recall his name off the top of my head, but what he said was this. He asked his audience a question. What would you say is the most important thing to have in a marriage relationship? The answers were numerous, ranging from patience to honesty to compatibility to a sense of humor, etc., etc. At the end, the speaker said, these are all good things and great things in a relationship, but they cannot happen if you do not have this one thing before all of that. His next comment really hit home with me, and I totally believe it's true. He said, none of these things are possible if you are not nurturing your spouse's heart. If you are not a safe place for them to come to, they feel like they can trust you, have faith in you, and they feel comfortable talking to you about anything without fear, then you are not nurturing or protecting their heart, and they will not do any of those things mentioned by others, nor will they want to talk to you about anything, and you see the walls start to build up between you. They start to close off, and you are not privy to their life as you ought to be. But it's really not their fault. Another key thing to note here is that if you, as your spouse's partner and closest human being to them in life, are not their number one to turn to and talk to, after the Lord of course, then they will find other sources to fill that hole, even if it's a subconscious thing or they don't mean to. Either it's another person who is not their spouse, and that can become very unhealthy or even sinful, or they hold it in and the pressure builds up inside until they explode. Neither of these things are good, and they are 100% preventable. But it starts with your own actions, how you treat your spouse, and how safe they feel with you. I will mention here too that I am not saying there should be no disagreements or anything like that, because healthy relationships do need that to a certain degree. And you can't grow if you aren't balanced out by rebuking or opposing ideas. But when that is taken too far, and the other party does not feel they can bring anything up to you for fear of judgment, which is not your place, or that it will cause you serious issues, they should feel safe with you even if you might disagree or have a slight problem with what they bring to you. Those feelings are to be expressed with the fruit of the Spirit, with a filter, so to speak. Love, patience, self-control, goodness, etc. And I am no perfect example of this. I fail many times. I am not the role model. But what I present here I know is truth. I have seen it blossom and bear fruit in my own relationship, as my husband expressed these very characteristics to me and allowed me to open up to him, and it is so beautiful. So I encourage every one of you, whether in a relationship or not, to practice this very act of being someone who nurtures hearts as well as makes communication a priority. So to cap it off, I just want to say again that communication is a huge thing, but I'm 100% positive that no couple is ever exactly on the same page when they start out. That's part of the learning process, and is another great opportunity to learn patience, which I know everyone loves. Thanks for joining me today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this podcast, and I will be excited to put out some questions for you all, or if you have questions, to bring them to me. Check me out on social media, live.by.faith17, and I look forward to seeing you in the next podcast. Bye!